It is Saturday, March 27th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the 12th Quick Hit Pod in our Dynasty Prospect Scouting Report series. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me, as always, is Jared Smola. You can now find 17 Dynasty Rookie Scouting Reports on DraftSharks.com. Every single one of them is free to read, and they will keep coming as the NFL Draft approaches. You can check out every one of these accompanying podcasts by subscribing to the Draft Sharks YouTube channel, as well as any of our podcast feeds. Today's focal point is Western Michigan wideout Dwayne Eskridge. Jared, tell me about the Max Speedster.
Yeah, he had an eventful college career. He was actually a three-star running back recruit coming out of Bluffton High School in Indiana. Ran for over 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns as a senior. Wasn't highly recruited, though. Actually, his only known offers came from Western Michigan and Ball State. Eskridge chose Western Michigan, immediately made that move to wide receiver, finished that 2016 season as a freshman, fifth on the team in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Corey Davis was a senior on that 2016 team. That's how long Eskridge has been in college. 2017, as a sophomore, Davis gone to the NFL. Eskridge led that team with 506 receiving yards, but was just third with 30 catches and 3 touchdowns behind redshirt sophomore Keyshawn Watson and senior tight end Donnie Ernsberger. Not big names there. Eskridge did set new career highs in 2018 as a junior with 38 catches, 776 receiving yards, but finished behind freshman Jaden Reed in all major receiving categories that season. Eskridge market shares that year, 60% of the receptions, 25% of the receiving yards, 15% of the touchdowns. So pretty underwhelming for a junior, playing in the MAC. Also missed a couple games that season with an undisclosed injury. 2019, the first 4 games of the year, Eskridge played both wide receiver and cornerback for Western Michigan. Total just 3 catches, made 14 tackles on defense. His season ended, though, in that 4th game with a broken and displaced right collarbone that required surgery. So he took a medical redshirt, returned for a 5th year this past year, finally broke out. It was just a 6-game season for Western Michigan because of COVID stuff, but Eskridge topped 100 yards in 5 of those 6 games, averaged 131 receiving yards per game. That led the MAC, was 4th best in the entire country. The market shares were big, 33% of Western Michigan's receptions, 45% of the receiving yards, 44% of the touchdowns. Also handled kick returns for the Broncos, was named first team All-MAC as both a receiver and a kick returner.
You don't like the age. It's not good just for general age purposes entering the draft. You don't like the late breakout age. A low volume pass offense certainly didn't help his numbers overall. Broncos averaged 13 more rushing attempts per game last season than passing attempts. Similar in 2018, the last time that we got a real season from Dwayne Eskridge. But the numbers were disappointing, as you've already mentioned. He trailed Jaden Reed. He was also barely ahead of Giovanni Ricci and running back Levante Bellamy in catch volume last year. So there are definitely some red flags to go with Dwayne Eskridge here. So that gets us into the film review section, Jared. What did you see when watching Dwayne Eskridge in action?
Yeah, he's fast, especially playing in the MAC. He was the fastest guy on the field for most, if not all, of his games last season. It really looked easy at times for Eskridge. He would just outrun defenders either on deep balls or on, shorter stuff and just outrun them after the catch for long touchdowns. He does show some decent route running ability. He can stop on a dime on comebacks. He has enough quickness to create separation on, some short and intermediate routes. I think his weaknesses, he's not very comfortable when he doesn't create separation in traffic, in contested situations. Also had a couple of drops in the 3 games I was able to watch. PFF charted him with an 8% drop rate, so nothing to be concerned about there. But I just don't think, he's not a guy who even in college would win in tight coverage in contested situations. So I definitely don't think you can project him to do that in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not a whole lot else to say here. I don't think he's a speed guy. He did most of his damage on deep routes or on routes that allowed him to catch a ball short and then just outrun overmatched defensive backs. Even for a guy, though, where the selling point is speed, his speed's not special. I mean, it's 4.38 40 is very good. It's well above average, but it's not like he's John Ross fast. So even if that's his one selling point, it's not necessarily top shelf as we get to the pros. And that then brings us to the fantasy outlook portion. So Jared, what you got for what we should expect from Dwayne Eskridge heading into the pros, and especially for fantasy purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that speed is going to play at the next level. I mean, if he's going to succeed, it's going to be with that speed. Otherwise, though, if you look at his athletic testing numbers from his pro day, they're pretty average. He was 44th percentile in the vertical. He was 74th percentile in the broad jump, but then he was just 49th percentile in the 3-cone, 47th percentile in the short shuttle. So, he's kind of a fast guy, but he's not an elite athlete. He's undersized at 5'9", 190. As you mentioned, Matt, he's already 24 years old, didn't break out until he was a 23-year-old, fifth-year senior in the MAC. Also had some injury issues at Western Michigan. He had 3 separate injuries, including the collarbone. The collarbone's probably not something we need to worry about, but he did have some trouble staying on the field. So just some people are going to fall in love with the highlights and that sub 4.4 speed, but he really doesn't check many boxes. We'll see where he ends up landing, but he's the type of guy who you probably want to fade in dynasty rookie drafts unless you can get him super late.
Right. If you want to take him in round 4, round 5, I think that's fine. Most guys in that range aren't likely to turn into anything. So stick him down the roster and see what happens. I don't think there's a path to him being a team's lead receiver in the NFL, though. Not even a reliable number 2. If he can be a team's kick returner, that would help him stick on rosters and maybe get some opportunities. But I think the ceiling for him looks like what Mecole Hardman has been for the Chiefs so far, where he flashes, maybe scores 5 to 6 touchdowns in a given year in the right situation, but not likely to be a predictable fantasy producer. My comp, I think right now, is Damiere Byrd. 18.6 yards per catch through his college career. He only had 68 catches career through college. And then he's bounced around the NFL. He's flashed at times, but hasn't really stuck anywhere and hasn't been a sustaining producer for anybody.
Yeah, you might be the first person to ever comp an incoming rookie to Damiere Byrd. I don't hate it. It's not bad. It kind of shows you the potential range of outcomes for Eskridge. Not a guy I'm very excited about.
Exactly. Check out DraftSharks.com for Jared's full scouting report on Dwayne Eskridge to see a little bit more than the speed, but not a whole lot more. Plus 16 others posted so far. Many more to come to DraftSharks.com. As I've mentioned, the prospect scouting reports are all free to read, but you should lock in your DS Insider access now. That way you can see where all these guys rank in our dynasty rankings, which are sure to be updated up to and through the draft. You can also access our 2021 redraft rankings and the MVP draft board. That'll help you with your best ball drafting right now, and obviously all the way through draft season. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at Draft Sharks. Jared is at SmolaDS. I am at SchaufDS. It's SCHAUF. For Jared Smola and the rest of the Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.